My parents took my siblings and I out to dinner at a restaurant that we frequented in Israel. We went there a lot. It was like, so there wasn't anything special about it. What was weird was I was sick. I used to get sick a lot in Israel. And I was sick. I was out with like pneumonia for like 2 or 3 weeks. I wasn't in school. And my parents like really insisted that we go get dinner. And I wasn't really sure why because I was sick. And I wasn't really, like, I wasn't recovering yet. And so I wasn't really into like eating a lot of food. Um, but we went out and it was just like any other night. It was really nice. And then my parents said, "Do you guys want to order dessert?" Which was another kind of weird thing because my mom would always advocate for us to go home and make tea and make cake and just like eat our own dessert. But I have two younger siblings and they got very excited, so we ordered dessert. And as we were finishing dessert, my mom kind of looks at my dad and goes, "Okay, Robbie, like we should tell them." And in typical uh, Mueller fashion, my dad chickened out, and so my mom did it. And she looked at us and said, "We're moving to the United States in a month, and you have a month to say goodbye to your friends, and you can't tell them that we're leaving the country for good. You have to tell them that we're leaving for 2 years and that we're coming back," which was really weird and like super bizarre. And I didn't know what to do. And the reason we had to essentially lie and say that we're only moving for 2 years was because Intel in Israel could have sabotaged our move and could have sabotaged like the green card application process for us. And so, yeah, they said that, and we went home, and I didn't really know what to do. Yeah. I actually called my best friend, and it was really interesting. My mom told me I could tell my best friend, but I called my best friend and I said, "Hey, like I need to tell you something." And she said, "You're going away, aren't you?" And we had never talked about it. We had never said anything. And my parents had been wanting to move out of Israel for a long time. But I'd never said to her that I think it was happening. She just like knew, which was really weird. But yeah, that was the moment it happened. So where we lived in Israel, I'd moved around as a young kid a lot, but we had lived in the same place for 5 years, and that was where um, I started high school, and my high school was 7th through 12th grade. So I started high school in there, and I would wake up and see the same thing, every morning. And then one day, you wake up. I remember like the day we left. I woke up. I saw the same view outside of my window, and then my mom asked me to go get milk to make sure that my siblings had that like we had breakfast, like they could eat cereal before we like went on like the journey to America. Um, and I went and got milk, and then my grandparents came. We put everything into the car and we just left, right? And you always I think that you're going to have enough time to say goodbye, or I think we don't even know how much time we need to say goodbye, but there's this like almost like cinematic sense that it's going to like take a while, and there's going to be like a grand farewell, but oftentimes it's just like quick. You just like rip the band-aid off and go. And so, to like see the same thing for 5 years and then to not see it anymore, and then to be like somewhere wondering, like having no clue or ability to like conceptualize what your future looks like, you know, it's really hard. And I think that was what was really difficult for me and for my family, um, especially for my parents. Like, my parents are two-time immigrants. Like, they immigrated to Israel and then they immigrated to the States. So it's the sense of like you are looking towards your future. And I think what leads so many of us as human beings is this capacity for direction, or for knowing which direction we want to go. And when you can't envision what the rest of like what tomorrow is going to look like, that's really frightening. And obviously, I was, very privileged and was able to live in a very nice neighborhood in Portland, and had a really nice house. And we had a house right from the beginning, and everything was fine, and we had food, and everything was okay. But it was still like I was so indoctrinated into the Israeli way of life and knowing that like the Israeli trajectory was what was, you know, in store for me, that I was going to graduate and I was going to go to the army and I was going to just finish the army and work and go to university. So when, and I didn't necessarily want that, right? Like I didn't necessarily want that for myself, but then when you're like put in a place where you, when you don't have that trajectory anymore and you don't know what it looks like, and you go to school and you're like forced into a new routine that is hard and you don't feel supported and you just feel incredibly lost, I think it can get, it's really hard to like come back up from that. Yeah, and so I would say that was hard, and it was hard for me to see my siblings go through that, although my little sister was very little and my younger brother, but it was hard to see, you know, it was hard to see my family kind of lost. So I have a very, I think, different perception of home, um, because I've never really felt at home in a place before. So, like when I'm here, like in the past couple of years, I think I still am trying to reconcile moving away from Israel, and something I notice is that it's easier for me to refer to Israel as home now, or as where I come from. But when I was in Israel, it was hard for me to think of it as home, because I think I've always kind of had a struggle with my environment, right? But I've kind of noticed that I don't get attached to places the way I do to people. So my family has always been my home and has always been something that I come back to, you know? And so wherever they are, I think, is wherever I am most at home. But I can't say that there was a moment that, well, maybe that's not true. I know that there was a moment, there was one morning that I woke up and I felt like I wasn't lost anymore. And it's this like, my mom is always, I call it like the spontaneous morning. Like my mom always has this idea. She's like, things are hard, but one day you're going to wake up and it's not going to be that way anymore, you know? And I remember like waking up one day and thinking, like, I can do this. Like I'm going to school, I have friends, I'm figuring things out, I want to go to college. Like I know where I'm going, which was nicer. But the idea of home, I can't say that I felt it in regards to the United States, or like the regards to like the America as a space. I'm home because of my family, and I've managed to find like close, incredible friends and people here. But like the space itself is hard for me to like conceptualize it as a home. Anibal Ramirez-Ramirez was an American who died on October 2nd, 2011.